Hello, ladies, gents, and everybody else, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor Rebush. That's Phil McKenzie.
Hello.
And you are listening to... It's always a joy, isn't it, Phil, when we get a pay-per-view episode? I mean, sometimes I feel like we spend all month just looking forward to the pay-per-view. Or at least we're going to get... we're gonna have the wonderful problem of trying to figure out which fights not to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So, having said that, I haven't looked at UFC 301 yet, but let me just click over to the Wikipedia page. Oh. I wish we hadn't burned the playing the outro song bit last week.
I think it was a good time to burn it.
It certainly was. And this is certainly a better card than last week's. It's a better card than next week's, which is shockingly not an Apex card. This one, shockingly, is not a Travel Fight Night card, which is really what it looks like, except for the fact that it happens to have a title fight at the top. But even that title fight is very much we scheduled this in advance, and we didn't happen to have anything else better available. So here you go, Alexandre Pantoja.
Yeah, it is a contractually obligated type title defense pay-per-view thing of the sort which I think I said at the time they were really going to miss Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko for, because they used to be able to line them up ages in advance. They'd be like, do you want to fight against whoever? And Nunes or Shevchenko would just be like, fine, sure, I can do that. Yes, put me in.
Yep.
And yeah, without them, they've now got a bunch of fighters who are less confident that they're going to thrash anyone they go up against, and who are mostly like, maybe I would like some time to prepare. And so, yeah, this is what happens. I will say, from the perspective of someone who is, who doesn't have to pay for these.
Yeah, it seems fine, right?
It is at least, yeah, exactly, because it's just, as far as it goes, it's just another weekend of UFC, and it's, it's a decent standard traveling card.
I totally agree. Yeah, even the ones that don't immediately jump out, like, I'm happy to see. He's not the name that jumps out right away, but when I look a little closer and I see that Elves Brenner is on the prelims, I'm like, oh, that guy's awesome. He's a lot of fun. That should be cool. Yep. When I see Alessandro Costa, Kevin Borjas, and the Curtain Jerker, I'm like, oh, that'll be fun. That's a fun fight. Fun flyweight little action fight. Cool. And then, of course, we have Jack Shore, Joe Anderson, Brito. I think that's a really cool matchup. I love the technician Jack Shore. I greatly enjoy the athletic freak and shit talker Joe Anderson Brito. talking literal shit. I mean, not even words. And and then there's middleweights and light heavyweights on the main card for no reason. I don't really care about those fights, but I expect that. And then, of course, we have the main and co-main, which are, again, not a great title fight. Steve Erceg is a very cool fighter who really should not have been rushed into this so soon. He needed, 2 more fights to test him, and he's literally number 10 in the division right now, fighting for the belt. And then Jonathan Martinez versus the returning from, a 2-year layoff, Jose Aldo. There's asterisks, but it's cool. Of course, I want to see Jose Aldo fight. I like Jonathan Martinez. Context is everything. If this was a fight night card, I don't think I would complain at all. This would be a great travel card. But as a pay-per-view?
Yeah, I think it's somewhere between a decent fight night and, the sort of, the ESPN. It's not quite as good as the sort of ESPN or UFC on Fox kind of cards, which are just, a tier below good pay-per-views. All this to be said is that it's definitely not a pay-per-view quality card.
Yeah. Yeah, as somebody who, as nominally a card that people more honest than me will be paying $85 to watch, it does not feel up to snuff. I mean, like, where's Amir Albazi?
Yeah, I mean, again, it must just be a scheduling thing. Amir Albazi, Kai Kara France, like
Albazi, Manel Kape.
Yeah, who knows?
Alex Perez, who fought last weekend for some reason, is higher ranked. Kai Kara France, like, these are all clearly, just in pure ranking terms, better choices for a title shot. And I'm not talking shit about either Pantoja or Erceg. I really enjoy both of I think they're both great fighters, but it's too soon for Erceg, and doesn't feel like anything significant for Pantoja's second title defense. So it is what it is. It's certainly better than last week's card, about which we will probably have 5 minutes worth of shit to say, maybe a little more, at the very end of today's episode. The main event was cool. Alex Perez is not only back, he's looking pretty good. So that's fun. But yeah.
Yep.
Don't turn off now. I know we've just complained and whined as we usually do, but like I said, context is everything. It's not that there aren't good fights that will be interesting to talk about on this card. There are, in fact, several. And it's just, it is what it is. Let's talk about the main event. Alexandre Pantoja, once again, making his second defense of the UFC flyweight title. Last time out, he defended against Brandon Royval. I haven't forgotten a fight, have I? No, that's right. Last time out, he defended against Brandon Royval in a decidedly one-note fight, which was just basically an extended version of the first fight they had, where Royval just could not figure out a way to not let Pantoja out-grapple him the entire time, even when he was gassed as he is after round 2 of literally every fight. He still managed to out-grapple Royval en route to a win. Steve Erceg, like I said, a very fun up-and-coming fighter. He's been super impressive for 3 fights now in the UFC. A boxer, I would say, is the best way to describe his style. A rangy, outside and pocket boxer. Has an excellent jab, good footwork. I mean, I think he really seems to understand. He really seems to understand how to control a fight from range in a way that I would say still most MMA fighters don't. I thought his fight with Matt Schnell was an excellent demonstration of that. Matt Schnell tried to overwhelm him. He immediately just started punishing him with the jab. He didn't overreact to any of Matt Schnell's crazy, over-ambitious threats. He just kept him on the end of the jab and set him up for counter right hand after counter right hand, and ultimately drew him into a pocket exchange where he wrecked him with a right hand to the body followed by a devastating left hook upstairs. Very sharp, dangerous, accurate. It's simply too soon, and that's probably best exemplified by the question you asked me just before we started recording, Phil. What was that? What did you say?
Have we ever seen Steve Erceg fight a wrestler?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that we have. I mean, again, like, it's one of these things where, if the UFC is attempting to push this guy in some small way, and I guess they are, this is obviously the thing that they tend to do. If they think they have a fun striker on their hands, they are often just going to match them up against other fun strikers.
Yeah.
All the way up until the belt. Many people have had this kind of dynamic throughout their UFC careers. And so, yeah, we're kind of left with someone who's mostly just been fighting people who were a bit like him. As you were saying beforehand, I think he does look like someone who has generally, like, quite good grappling instincts. Mm-hmm. Looks like he approaches takedown defense well. I think it's, and, you know, just from the basic, like, elements of who he is as a fighter, like, you can definitely see places where he could trouble Pantoja. Like, it won't take him being all that good at takedown defense to win this. Because, you know, I mean, the bar was a somewhat competitive fight with Brandon Royval, who has some of the worst takedown defense we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, meaning, like, all Erceg has to do is maintain range, and he has to basically fight off that one moment where Pantoja just decides to stop tanking jabs and just run in and, like, charge for a body lock.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fight where having a boxing game, a real rounded boxing game, should go a long way towards takedown defense. Because it's not like Pantoja's known for his beautifully set up shot takedowns or his, you know, like tactical clinch entries. He tends to just overwhelm people and then get a hold of them, and his actual takedown technique is generally not that great. He simply like wants to get his hands locked and wrench people off their feet. He's very strong. He's very determined. He doesn't give a shit about expending energy. That's how he gets people down for the most part. And so if Erceg can like fence him off, if he can keep him on the end of the jab, if he can keep turning and making him reset his feet, that could be a lot of the takedown defense he really needs. And I will say, the only glimpse, at least in the UFC, we've gotten of his stand-up wrestling technique was against Alessandro Costa. There were a lot of takedowns exchanged in that fight. In fact, Erceg kind of turned into a wrestler himself in round 3. I don't know if he felt he had a point to prove, or he just suddenly realized that he was actually sort of beating Costa on the ground, and decided to lean on that. But I would say his stand-up wrestling technique looked quite good against a less threatening wrestler, a less threatening grappler in particular. But he did a good job of finding his whizzers when they were in clinches. He diligently sought head position. He pummeled for underhooks when he needed to, used them to stand back up when his balance was upset. You know, didn't overdrive into Costa, like giving up a throw, or he generally seemed to have like pretty good wrestling footwork in those moments, and upper body positioning too. But I don't know. It is a little difficult to expect him to go 5 rounds without getting taken down a few times, just by accidentally running into the fence, or again getting overwhelmed, possibly just getting nailed. Pantoja still has quite quick hands, and he has sort of the Mike Perry effect at times of just making a decision to let you hit him so he can hit you back. And I think the real concern is not so much the takedown defense as the grappling instincts.
Yeah.
Which are good enough for Erceg against a lot of flyweights, but do involve him basically instantly giving up his back when he gets taken down. And that is just something that tends to get people in huge trouble against Pantoja.
Yeah, I mean, so I think Pantoja's sort of concessions to more technicality as a champion have mostly been around, like, at least on the feet, the fact that he now jabs, and that has really made his game just, like, function a lot better, partially because he throws, as far as I can tell, the basic functionality of it is that he throws a jab, and he's basically, if you jab with him, he's either confident that he will trade with you and he'll come out ahead because he has incredible chin and good power, or if he loses, he's just going to, if he just gets out jabbed, if the other fighter picks up an angle on him, that he's just going to tank it. And eventually, he's essentially just he will continue jabbing with people until they have built an exchange with him, and then he will swing back at them, and he will try and encourage them to take swings at him, essentially, by just jabbing with them until they try and either counter his jab or they try and sit down on something because he's not getting discouraged. And then he's going to try and swing with them and then grab them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worked shockingly well.
Yep.
And I think the interesting thing about Erceg is that he can deal with jabs by attacking them from an angle and hooking around them and trying to deal with them in a way that does not leave him like on a straight line to get into brawls with Alexandre Pantoja, which pretty much everyone else sort of had to concede to that kind of fight. Royval was just like, if I'm was going to try and be far away and then move back out. And eventually this just disintegrated. But Erceg at least will be able to like jab and move off.
Very good angular footwork.
He's got angular footwork, and he's just a sharper striker than any of these guys, really. Like in terms of how much he puts into his strikes. Like Moreno, as much as he has himself like a nice jab, has an absolutely horrific right hand, which we've talked about many times. Which meant that, again, as soon as he got pulled into anything which wasn't like a jab exchange with Pantoja, the fight just, again, like completely disintegrated.
Yep.
So, yeah, I do feel like there is room for Erceg to there is room for Erceg to run that game like more effectively than either of those guys could. But yeah, as you said, like the actual problems are that, like many outside strikers, I think he does use the clinch as an escape valve. The Schnell fight, he gets pushed back into the cage and immediately starts clinching up, which is going to be troublesome against Pantoja. Yeah. And the second, like you said, it's the problem that he's not going to be necessarily just giving up takedowns to Pantoja, but he's going to be giving up potential like checkmate.
Yeah, exactly.
Checkmate positions, or at least within the context of a round.
Right.
Like, if Pantoja gets on your back, that round is in the bank.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, he's, I think the big thing here is really just, again, the fact that it's too soon. Like, Steve Erceg, you would not believe watching him, if you had, spent a lot of time watching other MMA fighters, that he's 28 with only 12 or 13 fights under his belt. He certainly has the look of a guy who could very quickly mature into a championship level fighter. He's really disciplined, he's sharp, and he doesn't shake easily. Like, he got hit really hard by Matt Schnell a few times in their fight. He got taken down by Alessandro Costa, and nailed with some hard shots in that fight as well. Like, we have seen him put in some positions where he has needed to show, like, not only his resolve, but his poise, his ability to continue being technical and relaxed. And he has that. Much more than you would expect given his experience. So, I don't think it's impossible that this is a fight where he looks like a guy who rises to the occasion. I think just over the course of 3 UFC fights, he has gotten just sharper and sharper. It really looks like he's coming into his own and probably entering his prime as an athlete. But there is still a thing with lack of experience where, a couple things suffer when you're still that young in your career. One is not knowing how to pace yourself. I'm not particularly worried that Erceg, he looks like a very well-conditioned fighter, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was like unsure of how to win rounds effectively when there's 5 of them, that he might lose sight of what's happening in the big picture. The other thing that, particularly for MMA fighters, tends to come with experience is defense. And obviously a guy like Pantoja doesn't need much of that. But it would help for Erceg, because he does tend to get hit really hard and really clean at least 3 times per fight. Even when he has his foe outmatched. And I think this is because footwork is Steve Erceg's game. It is the reason his offense is so effective. I mean, there's more to it, of course. You know, the guy knows how to use his feints. He knows how to be tricky and throw away punches. And once he's got you reactive, he will fuck with the rhythm and trick you. Very clever, mature striker. But so much of his game and his ability to control people is just the footwork. And as you said, like in the Machnell fight, there's a part where he gets backed up to the cage and goes into the clinch. Your footwork cannot be the only thing that's going to save you every time. You're going to find yourself out of position. Something's going to surprise you. You're going to have to take a hurried step back and find that the fence is suddenly at your back. And I worry about him being put in positions where he needs a deeper well of defensive technique to keep up with Pantoja's just sheer ferocity. Where it becomes the kind of fight where suddenly realizing he's not sure if it's a big ugly takedown attempt or a big ugly right hand coming at him could get him in serious trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to see from Erceg the ability to like stay really cool and poised and like slip a shot against the fence and then get back out.
Yeah. It's a problem. Like he looks like, just like a great talent, but it's the issue that he's skipped an entire tier, essentially.
Yeah.
With all due respect to Match Now.
He went from fringe contention. He went from gatekeepers to title contention, basically.
Yeah. And there's just like a huge array of style matchups that we haven't seen him in. Like, what does he look like against like any kind of coherent leg kicking game?
Right.
Like, what if he's another boxer that's just like, incredibly reliant on being heavy on his front foot and throwing his jab, and Pantoja just jabs and low kicks him and then goes into takedowns. Like, unless I've seen more about this kind of, about him handling that kind of stuff, it's really tough to pick him, because part of me does want to pick him.
Me too. Yeah, I really like him, and like I said, Pantoja is not such a creative wrestler, or even really such a creative striker, that Erceg couldn't win large sections of the fight and completely nullify the grappling threat just with his boxing and his footwork. Mm-hmm. I think as long as this fight is at range and Pantoja hasn't really gotten rolling, Erceg is going to bank minutes at a time, quite possibly. But yeah, I mean, the leg kicks are a great point. Like, we just really don't know. What if Pantoja will do that sometimes. He will pick an opponent and be like, I'm going to hammer this guy with low kicks all fight long. Does that completely fuck up Erceg's game, which is heavily reliant on the jab and the pivot? Mm-hmm. Possibly.
How does he respond when he hits someone with his hardest punch and it just visibly does absolutely
exactly.
nothing?
They just don't care. Yeah, that's another experience thing. Can he manage his emotions and his tension against an opponent just as indefatigable as Pantoja? We just don't know. It's too soon, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely fascinated by this fight. I think it is a really interesting one. I mean, partially for these reasons. I know there's lots of questions I would like to see answered from Steve Erceg. Like, if he answers them in the positive, that's incredible.
Sure.
But I mean, just seeing a few of them answered, but it's a long list of things that he needs to answer positively to win this one, I feel.
Yeah.
Unless, suddenly, Pantoja falls off a cliff or whatever, or I say just lands one giant punch and suddenly Pantoja's chin has just cracked suddenly. But, outside of weird things happening, it does seem like one where you have to just pick you have to pick Erceg to answer a whole bunch of unknowns positively.
Yeah. Pantoja, by the way, one of the hardest people to even hurt in all of MMA.
Yeah. Like, he's on the Cheeto Vera tier of, this man is barely ever even hurt.
Yeah. Literally, the only person who's even credited with a knockdown against him is Figueiredo.
Mm-hmm.
And he got hit with a lot of Figueiredo's hardest punches in that fight. And, yeah. He was more gassed
again,
when
I'm
he was
slightly
wounded.
Yeah. Again, it's one of my sort of slightly controversial takes, but like, I think he was actually like wearing Figueiredo down at the end of that fight.
Yeah, just happened to. It was just
Figueiredo
still there.
was starting to look really miserable.
It was just still there, still going for it. Like that. That's the Pantoja thing, man. Even if you do somehow manage to hurt him, which Erceg could. I don't think he's a huge puncher compared to someone like Figueiredo, but he's a hard enough puncher, and he's accurate, and his timing is excellent. His setups are great, and he will blindside you with his punches. He could hurt Pantoja, but can he keep his cool? Can he finish him? Can he prevent the adrenaline dump that allows Pantoja, who just keeps doing the same crazy shit, to come back? Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that does add a certain fascinating angle to it. But on the other hand, like a title fight is never for me the right place to be answering like unknowns about yourself beyond just the final question of like, how do you handle yourself in a title fight? But he should have fought some contenders. And I really think, by the way, this is why the UFC should book like number one contender 5-rounders, even if they're not main events.
Mm-hmm.
Would be a really great proving ground, and also just give fighters like the in-cage experience they need of what it is to have a 5-round fight.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Maybe they should have done that, but I mean, even with retrospect, they couldn't have done that with like Matt Schnell versus.
No, well, clearly they didn't know when that
like, huh?
they didn't know when that happened that this was gonna be a title fight, which is why such a thing won't happen. They'll do 5-round non-main events when it is like a marquee fight. They've done it a couple times now. They're not going to do it for number one contenders because that would create some expectation that they are beholden to have this person fight for the title, and they don't want that. They want to have the flexibility to just throw the fight together when they can. Because the schedule demands it. But, a cool fight nonetheless. I really like what I've seen out of Steve Erceg. By the way, if you haven't read it, it was published for free on my Substack. It might be behind a paywall now. I'm not 100% sure. But you should check out, I did do a breakdown of Steve Erceg's knockout, against Matt Schnell just after that happened. I talked about Erceg's command of initiative and contrasted that with Matt Schnell trying to rush layered combinations in a way that very much did not work against a guy who just lined up his jab and stopped him in his tracks. So go check that out on the Finer Points of Face Punching. And I think that's about all we have to say. Are we both picking Pantoja? I am sorely tempted to pick Erceg, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, me too. I really am. But I'm not going to. I just can't. It's just not.
Yep.
Even if he like dominates this fight, in retrospect, I don't think I could. It's one of the ones where I just don't think it's right to pick him.
Yep. He looks like a guy who rises to the occasion. He's a very disciplined fighter. A little special preparation for what Pantoja brings to the table. I don't think it would be the craziest thing in the world if he managed to bank 3 or 4 rounds, just keeping Pantoja on the end of his punches and countering him. And even possibly, pushing him back, and controlling the fight. But I just can't pick it until I see it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's end this segment there then. When we come back, again, there are several other interesting fights, albeit some with asterisks on this pay-per-view card. Jonathan Martinez versus Jose Aldo is the co-main event. Aldo's first fight since August of 2022 when he retired. Somehow that didn't stick. First time that's happened. After that, the featured prelim, Jack Shore versus Joe Anderson Brito, another test, in fact, for the technician, Jack Shore, against a freakish athlete. Didn't pass the last one, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do with it this time. And then I think at the end, we are going to talk about last weekend's main event, Alex Perez versus Mateus Nicolau. I'm no longer sure how to pronounce his name. But anyway, all of that after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
And welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about the co-main event, dear Philip. Jonathan Martinez, Jose Aldo. Again, Aldo has not fought since he was sort of mauled, by
Wow.
yeah. Since he was decisioned.
It's about the most unmorley
It's
performance of Merab's recent career.
Since he was gummed by Merab Dvalishvili, who was in one of his two Merab modes. One is non-stop, relatively low-level violence, but non-stop violence. And the other is, I'm going to be technical. And in fact, in Merab's last fight, we saw both. And the first one, or the technical one, didn't work until he realized he should do the crazy one.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, the other one kind of worked. There are a bunch of people who were very butthurt and thought Jose Aldo won.
Yeah, come on, man.
Come on. I like him too, folks. And I get what you're saying, but was not a good Jose Aldo performance either. Anyway, he's back. Nearly 2 years later, something like, 17, 18 months later. No, probably closer to 20. He's fighting Jonathan Martinez, who has been on a little bit of a tear at bantamweight. He had a pretty close call fight against Said Nurmagomedov, where he made a few critically good decisions and then got away with a few sort of not great decisions late after Said was gassed. But then he absolutely wrecked Adrian Yanez in his last fight, in a fight that turned out to be a lot more one-sided for Martinez than I would have ever expected. So now he's fighting the greatest featherweight of all time at bantamweight after 20 months on the sidelines. I don't know. How do you feel about it, and what do you make of it?
So there's a few warring dynamics going on here. Firstly is that against a physically potent fighter who's basically finishing and or badly hurting everyone, don't pick 37-year-olds coming off massive layoffs, still less at, the actually good weight classes. The margins are thin down there, and just getting old is just not something you want to do.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Jonathan Martinez has been doing well broadly against the most leg-kickable people in the world.
Uh-huh.
Of which Jose Aldo is not one.
No.
As you said, he struggles massively with Said Nurmagomedov. In some ways, I thought he was quite fortunate to win that fight.
Yep.
I think he did win it, in that he, I thought that he probably, he did more damage, which is the important thing, but I did not think it was a card that would be scored for him very commonly.
That is exactly what I was going to say. I watched him. I thought he won it narrowly. I expected the judges not to give it to him, and I don't think I would have been either surprised or particularly disappointed by that decision if they had.
No.
Particularly in the
you
third
should just
round.
Expect the judges to score things how they generally score things.
Yeah.
Don't go into fights relying on people to pick up on minutiae of the scoring system, which they historically don't.
Yeah, particularly in the third round. That was not very good game theory from Jonathan Martinez to struggle mightily with the speed of Said earlier, then to figure out how to counter him and how to work him in the clinch, and then to just clinch but not do anything with it for most of the third round, when Said was at his most gassed and least speedy of the entire fight. It was a very close run thing where I thought Martinez could have really pushed for it and gotten an impressive win. Instead, he got a barely win.
Yeah. And I'm also find myself thinking, this is, I think Martinez is actually probably slightly smaller than Aldo. He's not huge. According to Wikipedia, I think they're the same height, but I think Aldo's actually both taller and bigger than him. Do I trust a smaller fighter who doesn't push the pace, who is, mostly one and done, or throws in very short bursts and, gets a lot of his work done with low kicks? Do I trust this person to beat Jose Aldo? And as I said, the general answer should be absolutely yes, because Jose Aldo is 37 years old and coming off a 2-year layoff.
Yeah.
But one of the things which has me potentially changing my mind is the modern dynamic of old fighters doing really well. And I don't know what it is, if they've found some sports psychologist in the UFC Performance Center, or there's just been some real advanced science,
some sort of therapy, we can say.
Yeah, or maybe there's just some kind of
whether it's psychological therapy
magical
or
fountain of youth,
whether it's
people have found, and they're just and the fighters have just been sharing, where to go to find the fountain of youth, and we've just seen a lot of old guys looking surprisingly good lately. Whether it's good for varying values of the word good, but whether it's OSP or Chris Weidman,
RDA to an extent,
or RDA. Yeah, just coming in there looking
young,
physically closer to their primes than you might otherwise expect.
Yeah,
and
whether it's psychological therapy or hormone therapy, I'm not making any accusations, but
who knows whether there's been any kind of change recently that could have caused this. All the old guys to suddenly look at, and you know what? It is. I think it's still a stupid pick, but it might be enough for me to pick Jose Aldo. His
TKO parentheses juice.
Yeah, it is Martinez's inability to push on Nurmagomedov and his tendency to because that was the issue really, is that he couldn't throw without compromising himself in any way. Against guys against guys like Yanez, it didn't matter, because he just saw that the leg was there and then just immediately started crippling him.
Right.
But when he didn't know whether he was going to get taken down on the counter, when he had to initiate of his own accord, he just didn't like doing it very much.
Yeah.
And that's just a terrible place to be against Jose Aldo. I mean, again, I think I might pick Jose Aldo just to like win rounds off bursts of offense. Like, it'll be quite close, and then Jose Aldo will just like run at him and do one like body shot flying knee, and then steal a round.
Yep.
I think potentially Aldo can still maybe bully him a little bit at points, just because he is that guy. I mean, again, Martinez is a hoss. So yeah, it's entirely possible that he just boots Aldo and Aldo just crumbles into a million pieces.
Yeah,
but that isn't really anything that we've seen happen to Aldo at any point. Like, it hasn't necessarily been how he's lost.
It's never been how he's
never actually
lost.
looked physically. He's never really looked physically bad in any of these losses.
Yeah. Yeah, except in ways where he physically struggled even in his prime. Fights where he's just been gassed.
Keeping a pace and not gassing out. Yeah, he did that literally his entire career. If he couldn't control the pace,
Yep.
Dropping the 5th round to Lamas or Hominick or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I might pick Jose Aldo.
Mm-hmm. I kind of get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even setting aside the distinct possibility that all of these old fighters are just on the sauce, like we can be 100% certain they have, air quotes, they have finally made McGregor Chandler. It's set for a pay-per-view. It'd be very funny if McGregor, Nick Diaz's them and just like doesn't show up to media and just fucks off and screws up the whole event. I actually hope he does. That's what they deserve. That would be very funny. Also, not that Michael Chandler's the bad guy here. He's a bit of a doofus, but he works for the promoters. He's in the position I have a rooting stake in. It would still be kind of funny for Michael Chandler, who is like kind of a shithead and has now sat out for like almost 2 years or something himself to get this one fight that just McGregor clearly doesn't care about the same way he does.
Yeah, it is kind of funny seeing his relentless obsession and his like secret level, envisioning of it and attempting to bring it to fruition, just falling to absolute naught in the face of Conor McGregor's love for cocaine.
Well, that's the first time I've ever heard you say cocaine, Phil. I love that with your accent. Cocaine. Mm-hmm. It's never sounded so posh. But yeah, like the reason I bring it up is we can be 100% certain Conor McGregor has, if not in fight camp, and why wouldn't he, given the way things appear to be going, but he's been juicing for the preparation for his camp for sure. They were like, oh, he's not going to be in the testing pool. We're not going to make him do 6 months of pre-camp screening or whatever. They just publicly said that. I mean, they're not even hiding that. So yeah, setting that aside, it doesn't particularly look like the kind of matchup I've seen Jose Aldo struggle in. One thing I will say is that Jose he's not really known for actually checking low kicks. He can do it. I think of the Frankie Edgar fights.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He absorbed about 1,000 low kicks across those two fights. Frankie threw a lot of them. They were utterly powerless. They just sort of dinged off of Jose's titanic thighs. He didn't have to even respect them. But I don't know 100% for certain whether that's because they were ineffectual Frankie Edgar low kicks or because Jose does not, in fact, have great low kick defense. It could be one of those things where he hated getting kicked in the gym, and that's why he developed the game he had early on. Like, that is often the case. People learn to do the things that work.
He was very good good at defending, like, Pedro Munoz's calf kicks, as I recall.
That's
those
true.
Were just an utter non-factor against him.
That is 100% true. That's a very good reminder. So I think
I think he definitely can defend them, but I mean, also Volkanovski racked up a bunch of, but I think it might be a question of just,
does he care?
Does he, one of the main things that makes Jose Aldo is his reflexes. And, does he see you winding up for something?
True.
If so, he will defend it.
True. But Martinez is a bit of an Aldo-style low kicker, by which I mean he doesn't really always set them up.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of just blasts them. Yeah, and surely if Aldo has done any training at all, he will know that is a particular concern against this particular opponent. So, yeah, thank you for reminding me of the Munoz fight. He expertly destroyed the calf kicking game of Pedro Munoz in that one. So he's capable of doing it. Yeah, I'm going to pick him. I mean, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 2 years. He's old. He has been steadily declining, but at no point, as you said, has he actually looked like bad. He's just he's been an incredibly elite athlete for his entire career, as well as being a really dedicated student of the game, who's really interested in perfecting his technique. And I got to be concerned with what I saw from Jonathan Martinez. The last time he faced a good athlete, who was simply not wide open to be crushed with low kicks. And that was Nurmagomedov.
I mean, and Said Nurmagomedov isn't even he's not an amazing athlete.
No, he's fast. Is what
big.
He is. He's fast. Yeah. I wouldn't. Yeah, he doesn't truck people like Aldo, but he is really quick, and the speed clearly threw Martinez for a loop. There was a long phase of that fight where he was struggling to adjust to it. He kept getting caught in the pocket because Martinez is not particularly fast. He kept getting caught in the middle distance, and then he figured out how to feint or enter with a jab and crash into the clinch. And he could compete there. But then even in round 3, after that success, as I said, Said was gassed. He looked terrible, but he still had the hand speed and the leg speed. And Martinez was still so concerned about it that he started, I think, to view the clinch more as a safety zone than a place for him to win the fight. He just did not want to get stuck in middle distance with the faster man.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's a big factor I didn't think about. What if this fight just has loads of empty clinching in again?
Oh, it might certainly could. It's what Merab did, and Martinez has shown a predilection for that approach.
Mm-hmm.
And Jose Aldo, for all of his virtues and skills, has never really been a very good clinch fighter, has he?
He's just mostly looks to stiff arm people away and get back to back to range and
even in his
jab
prime
people again.
Even in his prime, there were
fights
where there were long sections where he was just kind of hanging out in the clinch. I mean, the knockout of Chad Mendes in their first fight was preceded by a long, at least on Aldo's part, empty cage wrestling sequence where he escaped and then just deaded Chad Mendes. The fight with Kenny Florian got a ton of just easy control time against the fence. Aldo just does not typically have a sense of urgency in those positions. And I'm not sure it's one of those areas where he's really invested a lot of time in developing a deep well of skill.
Yep.
I'm not sure he has a lot of moves.
Yeah, so that could in some ways be an even more grim outcome.
Yeah. Aldo shows up, he has
getting knocked out or losing a war.
Aldo shows up like RDA, he has an electric moment or two in the first round. You're like, oh my god, he's back!
Yep.
He's back and completely clean. And and then he just gets clinched against the fence and can't figure out what to do. That would suck. Might happen.
Man, I can really see that happening. But yeah, I'm going to pick him. Anyone who's listening to this, don't follow our lead. Don't pick 37-year-old men on 2-year layoffs against people in their prime.
No, we don't care. We're so used to being wrong, we just embrace it. We're willing to be wrong. Yeah, and even then, like you said, the fight with Saeed, like, he barely won that by going to the clinch.
Mm-hmm.
Barely. So, be really funny if it was exactly the same fight and the judges just went the way we expected them to go this time.
They do like Jose Aldo.
They just rob Martinez. There's a lot of potential for this to be stupid and awful and funny. And I hope it's that rather than incredibly sad and soul destroying for me, the world's biggest Jose Aldo fan. All right. Well, that'll do it for that. Again, a strange one, but certainly not an uninteresting matchup. I'm here for that. Let's take one more break. When we come back, on the prelims, we have Jack Shore versus Jeranderson Brito. Phil, you expressed an interest in Michel Pereira versus Ihor Potieria, so we might talk about that too.
I think I said I think that's going to make me sad, but sure.
Well, that counts as interest for you. Most of the time, you don't feel anything.
That is true.
And then we're going to talk about Nicolau versus Perez after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are talking now about the featured prelim of UFC 301. One thing in this card's favor, this feels like a reasonably good featured prelim. I guess they still care about that slot with pay-per-views. A lot of times it just seems to be completely arbitrary choice. I would say Jack Shore, a very promising fighter with a great resume who's now back on the winning track versus an imposing super athlete in Joanderson Brito, who is on a 4-fight winning streak. All of them wins by finish. Pretty solid. Feels like the best choice for a featured prelim on the entire undercard. So much so that really it should be on the main card above some of these goddamn middleweights and light heavyweights. But anyway, it's on the prelims. It's in a featured spot. It's good. As I said before, I view this as a dumber version of the test that Jack Shore very much failed when he fought Ricky Simone, which in a very broad sense was simply the super technical, well-rounded, good at preparing Jack Shore went in there against a much better natural athlete. Somebody who doesn't get tired, who hits hard and moves really fast and is physically strong. The difference being, I think Ricky Simone had more of a skill set than Joanderson Brito. Which is not to say Brito is just a complete mess, but Ricky Simone is like a very good wrestler. Ricky Simone also had made huge leaps technically as a striker, was actually finding good counters and throwing combinations and using his jab. And having reached that sort of level of skill with his athletic abilities, Jack Shore just it was a fight where he did so many things right and it just didn't matter. He just couldn't time the blistering speed or handle the power or the strength of Ricky Simone.
Yep.
So this time around, what do you think? Has anything changed, or is it simply a less complete version of that kind of problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the skill set thing, right? Because I think, Timo Valiev was also like a skillful, well-rounded fighter, but was just, lower on the athleticism totem pole than either Simone or, for that matter, Shaw, probably. I mean, certainly he was just smaller than Shaw.
Yeah, and just less powerful. Just less powerful.
Yeah.
Than the other two.
And Brito is definitely, like, worse than Ricky Simone, or probably Timo Valiev from like a purely technical standpoint, which may not matter because he's just like wildly dangerous.
Yep.
Just incredibly physically imposing. Like not an amazing. The main thing is that like he's not an amazing defensive wrestler. But again, he's so potent that he's able to like get his hips back out of the way, often like turn wrestling positions to his advantage. Like he's clearly someone who just likes hulking people around.
Yep.
Despite throwing like everything into every shot, he doesn't actually tire that badly. Like his Bill Algeo fight, I'm not sure that he actually lost it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like most of the rounds were broadly similar dynamics, which were Brito coming out hot and putting it on Bill Algeo, and then Algeo sort of coming back late in the round. And at least as far as like round 2. In fact, almost all of them. Like I didn't know if there was a strong argument for Algeo winning any of the rounds, because Brito was hurting him pretty badly.
Yeah, Algeo landed some good shots on him, as I recall in that second round. I think he tagged him with like a right hand or a straight left right at the beginning. He crunched him with some good knees on one of the few takedowns that he actually defended. He also spent a lot of the fight just getting out-grappled by Brito, which is, I'm going to say without looking it up, definitely Brito's technical base is his jiu-jitsu. But as you said, it's not, I don't mean to undersell him when I say it's like a less sophisticated version of Ricky Simone. That's largely because he's just willing to be messier. He doesn't.
If he's closest to anyone, he's basically Alexandre Pantoja, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He's perfectly willing to walk through shots. And it's just a lot more reckless and messy with how he presses the issue on people. He's super hittable because of that, particularly when he's throwing. But this is a thing that people often just brutally punished for trying to exploit, because throwing while Joannison Brito is throwing is a very dangerous thing. He's reasonably accurate. He knows how to set up his punches. He will go body head in combination. He will lead with his jab, and he will leap forward recklessly through huge amounts of space to make a shot connect. So it certainly is a fight that I can see Jack Shore winning. And you know me, I have my favorites. I love the technical guys. I'm definitely going to, and in fact probably am going to pick Jack Shore. But I'm going to pick him because Jack Shore has an excellent jab and strong footwork and can probably just stay out of the way. And the problem against Ricky Simone, I think, is that Simone was so dangerous was banking so much time with his wrestling success, which again, Jack Shore technically defended the takedown attempts really well. He just couldn't compete with Ricky Simone's strength at the end of the day. But he was so successful with that and was stealing so much time out of each round that Jack Shore had to press. And in fact, the fight ended because he walked onto a really fast right-hand counter from Ricky Simón. I don't think he has to press Joe Anderson Brito, who's just going to fly at him, trying to throw huge punches. And I think Jack Shore can find a lot of openings with the straight shots and the small adjustment steps while Brito is trying to surge after him and clip him. I also think Jack Shore might have some success this time with his own wrestling and grappling, although could very well be the kind of approach that gasses him out, just having to tangle with a hoss like Brito in close range. But as you pointed out, Brito he's just not defensively good at anything, really.
No.
And that includes takedowns.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if Shaw is going to win this, it has to be because he's going to be quicker.
Yeah.
Because I think if there's one thing which I think is actually just going to make me pick Joe Anderson Brito, it is that I think a lot of what made Shaw work was, again, that he was one of these fighters who could insulate himself a bit by being just bigger than his opponents.
Yeah.
And Ricky Simón is approximately as big as him. Ricky Simón is a bantamweight.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Anderson Brito and now Jack Shore is a featherweight. He's a quite large featherweight. I don't think he's actually taller than Jack Shore, but I think he's about the same size, but he's, a lot more bricked up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of controlling jab takedown game that works so well on like Timo Valiev and so on is going to be so much more risky against someone who's just going to be winging punches the entire time.
Yep.
And again, like Shaw's advantage if he's coming up a weight class needs to be speed. I just don't think he's actually like a particularly quick fighter. As opposed to like say Nathaniel Wood, who made the same journey, is one of his many gifts. I don't think like Shaw is particularly fast.
No,
which means that he's going to be fighting someone who is, yes. Which means he's going to be fighting someone who is going to be both bigger and more powerful than him, and possibly faster as well.
Yeah. I was going to say what speed Shore has is really like economy of motion. Mm-hmm. It's not actual raw speed.
Yeah. And it means that every time he's trying to establish that jab, he's going to be in range for a massive hitter.
Yeah.
And he needs to be cautious about his takedowns because he's, Brito has, as Jonathan Pierce found out, quite dangerous to try and hit sloppy shots on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick. Shaw's like featherweight debut was Makwan Amirkhani, which is about as forgiving a matchup as you could possibly give him.
Yeah. At worst, you're going to have one bad round, and then you're in.
Yes. Yep. This is just it's the perfect way to ease your way into a division.
Yep.
Like, here's some struggles, and then you can feel like you've overcome them.
Yep.
Because he's going to absolutely collapse in round 2. But yeah, this is not like that. This is someone who, comes out hot every single round, throws with power, is just big and explosive and dangerous everywhere. And yeah, I would really like to see Jack Shore win this. I don't think I can't pick him to.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to pick him as a vote of confidence in my boy. The gut says Brito. Bigger, more powerful, and willing to use those attributes in a way that is just game breaking. Like there's so much of having a technical and strategic approach to fighting that really relies on the opponent's the expectation that the opponent is going to respect your threats. That like you're gonna. You can't just you can't just move away from somebody. This is the capital T technical mistake that far too many MMA fighters make when they think they're going to become a smarter fighter, and they lose the fact that actually, like, being a principled and disciplined fighter means punishing your opponent for giving you openings, punishing them for, like, exposing weak angles, punishing them for overextending. Like, you gotta crack people, and you gotta hit them with jabs that hurt, and you have to make them twitch. You have to punish them. And, at a certain point, you will just run into guys where if you're not actually powerful enough to make the consequences of these errors be like fight changing. And it's not like Jack Shore can't hit at all. Again, great timing, very efficient technique, really accurate. But Joanderson Brito has been fighting like this his whole career. He's never been stopped. And he just knows that. He's just willing to eat those shots and put himself in those bad positions because it means he can hit you too. And he's going to do it with more power. And he's just not going to give a shit about the sort of rules that you're trying to establish with a more principled, strategic game. So yeah, I think Brito is absolutely the smart pick. I'm going to pick Jack Shore for the fun of it, and so that I can have actually less fun when I'm watching him lose. Anti-sadness hedge over here. All right. Still an interesting fight. I'm always super compelled to see a fighter like Jack Shore meet this kind of test. And, yeah, I mean, intellectually, I don't think it's an unwinnable one. Brito can be such a mess sometimes and so reckless. Like, there are a lot of opportunities for sure to get work done. But the question of whether that work will be enough to actually control Brito and control the pace of the fight, that is a very big question.
Yep.
Let's talk now about...
should be a good one.
Yeah, it'll be a fun contest. Good clash of styles. Let's talk about the flyweights from last weekend. We're done thinking that Alex Perez is just never going to fight now, like 2 in a row in pretty quick succession? He's done being snake bit?
Maybe he found the fountain of youth as well.
Oh, that's actually a very good point. That's actually a very good point. This guy, hold on, let me quickly, hold on. Let's check the Tapology. And find out real quick, how many of those cancellations were Alex Perez getting injured? I know they weren't all him getting injured, but I think a lot of them were. Manel Kape, medical issues on fight night. Okay, Kai Kara-France got injured. Perez withdrew against Albazi, no further notes. Askarov withdrew. Perez missed weight. Schnell withdrew to medical concerns. Askarov injured. Perez withdrew. Perez rebooked. Canceled due to coronavirus. So there are three, at least three possible Perez for either weight issues, medical concerns, or injuries, without without much explanation in that slew of like 9 canceled fights. Yeah, maybe he has found a fountain of youth. I don't know. We should find out when it was that the UFC ousted USADA. How long before March of 2024 did that happen? Few months?
Yep, because suddenly we have, I mean, you can see why it was a smart business decision for them.
Oh yeah.
They can't create any new stars. And then suddenly the old ones are all like, oh yeah, really? So you're saying that I can come back and I can be like Brock Lesnar now.
Yeah, if only Hollywood...
I can also do that. Sure, I will fight.
If only Hollywood could find a way to stop drug testing 80s film franchises, they would also have a lot more hits on their hands.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm shocked it took the UFC this long to discover that drug testing is in fact a terrible business decision.
Yep.
Just control the media and don't let anybody talk about it. And it turns out that most people don't really care that much, including kind of me. I don't care that much. Because I had kind of assumed that everybody was getting away with shit anyway. Even when USADA was there, I thought it was more window dressing than anything else. And
well, if nothing else, this recent spate of coincidences seems to prove that is, or indicate that was not the case. USADA genuinely was doing something.
Well,
but anyway,
hey, I guess you're right. Yeah.
All that being said, is that what it was doing was holding Alex Perez back from his true potential.
That's right. He came back against Mikhaev. The shocking thing about that was simply that he made the fight. He sort of won it on vibes, but lost it in, the way fights are actually scored. But he didn't look, he looked rusty, but not bad physically.
Mm-hmm.
And now against Nicolau, he looked good physically and good with his approach. I thought this was actually a very strong performance from Perez. Like, his technique remains completely janky, but his application was actually very smart.
Yeah.
And the same could not be said of
this made loads of sense.
Yeah, go on. What do you think?
Partially, this made me think a little bit of the Haney fight that we'd been talking about previously, because it was just the issues of being a pure counterpuncher or a pure one and done striker against someone who is big and has hand speed. And that it was to some extent like chickens coming home to roost for Nicolau, who is just like, as you said at length last time, just will not lead.
Yep.
He's just like, you're going to do something and then I will come back on you. And
not only will
Perez's
not
approach
lead,
was just really good.
Not only will not lead, but doesn't really concern himself over much with gaining initiative in a back foot style. The problem is not just that he won't lead, the problem is that he waits. And one thing you should
he
never
doesn't do anything to draw out or influence what is happening.
Yeah. He'll move and he'll stand there and he'll say, okay, you throw something. And one thing you should never ever do in a fist fight is wait. You can be evasive. You can try to neutralize. You can try to make the opponent take the lead, but you should not be waiting on them to do something. And there were long stretches of this fight where, just like Devin Haney, Nicolau was effectively standing in front of Perez, waiting for him to go. And Perez showed exactly why you should not do that. He attacked in layers. Oh, you're going to try to time me? You think I'm just going to throw one punch? What if I throw 4? What if 2 of them are to the body? Oh, you can't handle that. Shock, surprise. Yeah. Perez is, again, the technique is like really not great, but the, tactics of how he attacked Nicolau, particularly the body-head combinations, but really the combinations in general, just throwing punches from every conceivable angle in quick succession, showed exactly why you shouldn't just let somebody throw combinations at you.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about, we didn't think Perez was going to win this one because Nicolau would be, counter-punching in combination, and Perez's defense isn't really there and all that other kind of stuff. But, yeah, he just completely flipped that script.
Yep.
Because, he was double jabbing in. He wasn't giving Nicolau too much to work with until he was giving him too much to work with.
Too much to work with, yeah, exactly.
He wasn't... Because Nicolau was, looking on when he could key in on the first strike that Perez threw. But Perez was making sure to, defuse his reactions by, feinting or, double jabbing his way inside, or, he wasn't committing to much. But when he committed, he was making sure that he was setting things up, and it was because Nicolau was so much on the back foot. Eventually it was Perez who was able to draw out the counter and counter it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
it was just like a really well put together game plan.
Agreed. And as with Devin Haney, once Nicolau sort of realized that he couldn't keep up with all the different shots coming at him, his actual technical defense suffered for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, pretty quickly into the fight, Nicolau loves to circle, you know? He loves to draw people on to hard counters. He particularly likes the thing that Demetrius Johnson used to do a lot. I always think of it as the Willie Pep punch. When you sidestep, and then like kind of change back, you cut back, you shift the other way, often into the other stance, and just lance the dude coming in with what is now effectively a cross from the side you were just moving to. Nicolau loves that kind of move. A lot of the left hooks that he nails people with are more like left straights, because he will just draw them into it and then step back across with the left hand. Pretty quickly into the fight, what happened to the circling? Perez started firing combinations. Nicolau's, oh shit, I don't know what he's going to hit me with, and he just started running backwards into the fence. Straight back.
Mm-hmm.
Same shit happened to Devin Haney against Garcia. Devin Haney does, in fact, have a broader array of defensive techniques than he showed, but once he started to get hit and hurt and could no longer keep up with these long combinations, he just started like backing straight up into the corner and getting terribly out of position. And that happened multiple times, and it's exactly how the fight ended, with Nicolau trying to circle when it was far too late to circle. His back was already against the fence. And Perez just clocked him. So hey, yet another lesson in the importance of initiative. And also the importance
of... just preparation.
Yep.
You know, once again, I do find myself thinking that, like... Is Perez from the same camp as Rob Font? Are they both Team Oyama guys? I forget.
I think he is. In fact, yeah, Oyama was in his corner for sure.
And Font is an Oyama guy, right?
I think so. I know Cheeto is.
Maybe
Font actually is.
He isn't.
Font is not.
Okay.
Oyama has Cheeto. He has Alex Perez. He had Luis Smolka. I'm not sure if Smolka's still fighting. Couple good fighters though. Carlos Esparza.
But yeah, I think that Perez really does strike me as one of those like very coachable guys.
Yes.
And yeah, if he's, I think, you know, you just kind of program him and let him go, and he will do his thing. And in this case, whoever programmed Alex Perez this time, they did a really good job.
Yep. Yeah.
And yeah, I genuinely found myself pleased to see him doing well, because he's always been like a well-rounded fighter, like with lots to offer. Mm-hmm. And he's obviously been rough for him. He hasn't won a fight for however many years? At least two.
His last win.
The last time he won a fight
was June of 2020.
Yeah. So, closing in on 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is brutal.
Brutal. And so many of those 4 years were him just not being able to even make it into the cage. It's no wonder that he lost when he made a rare appearance with all the shit that was going on. I mean, honestly, like, if the main function of whatever steroids these fighters may be using is to allow them to not get horribly injured in camp, then I just don't think it's altogether a bad thing. Basically, like, if everybody could just have equal access to the same shit, I really wouldn't feel that bad about it. Like, it's bad for your body in some ways, but so is doing fist fights for a living. And if it helps you recover and actually maintain a consistent training schedule, I don't hate it. I cannot fully hate it.
Yeah. I mean, I find it's a moral issue, which is honestly too complicated for me to like tackle with any confidence.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna say, like, I'm happy to see Alex Perez like come out, execute really well.
Yeah.
Get like a win that he really, really deserved, and, you know, break break out of what must have been just a terrible, terrible few years.
Oh my God.
In the cage for him.
Can you imagine the depression you would go through if this was your job and you spent 4 years barely being able to fight and then just getting crushed on the rare occasions you did? 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It would be soul destroying. So yeah, I agree. Like whatever, not exactly accusations you want to level at him and the organization he fights for, it is genuinely very uplifting and nice to see a good fighter like Alex Perez get to have a consistent fight schedule again.
Yeah.
And
to see him, basically looking the best that he has for a very, very long time. I'll be happy to see him again.
Yep. Absolutely.
And next time I won't even make jokes about him not turning up.
Yeah, right? It's over. He's a fighter again. It's good. All right. Well, I think that will do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. I will tell you once more to check out my Substack. Probably by the time you're hearing this, in fact, there will be an article about Tim Means, whom we did not discuss, but who was brutally knocked out. Tim Means needs to find that fountain of youth. He's 40 years old. He might be particularly opposed because Tim Means did have a drug issue for many years.
I think there's a few guys like Tim Means and Matt Brown who would...
They'd probably rather die
look at the fountain of youth and say, no, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I have to inject something into my body that'll make me feel good. I think I learned my lesson. Good for them, I say. For Tim Means, probably not going to happen. Time has definitely caught up to him. He's 40 years old. He's been fighting pro for 20 of those years. And I think at least 26 or 27 of his 50-plus fights have happened in the UFC octagon. He has had an incredible and largely unheralded career. It actually used to be a good thing. Back when Joe Rogan was more engaged, he would always make a point of saying, Tim Means is really good. Like, he used to know about these guys because he would call all the cards and he watched, he did research, he cared. And he would always make a point in older Tim Means fights of saying, Tim Means doesn't get the respect he deserves. He's a very skilled fighter. And he is. And he has been for a super long time. He's got a ton of fun fights. You really like the picture of a great journeyman who was just never going to be elite, but was a stupendously effective gatekeeper for ranked fighters at welterweight and for a while lightweight before that. And so I did a little Tim Means breakdown, just showcasing some of his great technical moments. And that'll be up on the finer points of face punching, facepunching.substack.com. Also,
yes,
find us on Twitter, at Evil Greg Jackson, at Boxing Bush. One of those is Phil. One of them is me. Until next week, when we will be not only talking about whatever happens at UFC 301, and there are bound to be a couple shocking upsets, I feel. We are also, I think it's next week. We should double check. When is Fury Usyk happening?
Please tell me it's next week. I don't want to be talking about
the Derek Lewis card.
About Lewis Nascimento or whoever it is.
It is scheduled for May 18th. Oh, God. It's another week till we're talking with Kyle. Okay, so scrap that. In 2 weeks, I believe, we are having fan favorite and hosts of the podcast favorite, Kyle McLaughlin, back to talk about Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. That'll be something to look forward to. Next week, we're probably mostly going to talk about UFC 301 because hot on its heels is a pretty mid, to say the least, fight night travel card. I mean, if you think of it as an Apex card, you're like, this is, at least I recognize a lot of these names. But even then,
not for good reasons.
No, it's true. It sucks. It sucks. For a travel card, too, it is particularly bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, next week, more UFC 301. And until then, hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you then. And if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.